Thank you again, everyone, for joining the Hiring One-on-One training session. We hope that this will be very informative to you regarding recruitment, staffing, and classification. So today we have with us Ms. Tracy Kulik as well as Ms. Lauren Kajar. And Lauren, I hope I said your name correctly, but if not, please forgive me. They are from Enterprise Services and they will be conducting this training. So welcome both of you to NTIA. And I'll let you start next, Tracy.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. And thanks everyone for having us today. We're always happy to provide additional trainings and, kind of step in where it's needed. We recognize that, staff turns over or, we don't always hire often. Or, as often as we do other things like pay actions and personnel actions. So this is something that we recognize is needed. And we're happy to be here today. We are joined today by a couple of members of our HR tower. So actual HR professionals are on the line to answer your questions. Lauren and we know just enough about HR to be dangerous. So we've got Sandy Thomas and Sheila on the line today who will be joining in to either answer questions at the end of the session or in the chat as they're able. And then also Sandy's going to share some information, or Sheila, I'm not sure which one of them is going to brief today, but some information at the end about USA hire. Vera has a question.
Yes, yeah, just a quick question. And also I want to make sure folks know this is being recorded for you to reference later, as well as for those who are unable to attend. And is your preference that maybe we hold or post questions in the chat to allow you to go through the materials?
So yeah, actually, I appreciate that. Yeah, that was in my housekeeping slide, but absolutely, let's talk about it now. I was just going to ask everyone to make sure that they're on mute. Because sometimes people join late and we end up being privy to background noise that they may or may not have wanted us to hear. So if everybody can just check and make sure they're on mute. And then also, yeah, there's going to be a lot of information provided, and no doubt a lot of it will actually answer your questions, hopefully before you have a chance to ask them. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind holding those questions and or putting them in the chat, that's fine, because we'll go through them later, but more than likely whatever you're wanting to know is going to be provided in the session, because what we do is, and what we've been doing for over a year, is every time we do one of these, if people ask questions about something that we did not include in the material, we will then go ahead and include it in the next version. So we're hopeful that this becomes a better and better training session for folks as we continue to provide it. All right. I am going to go ahead then and ask Lauren to bring us to the next slide. Okay, so here's some of the things we're going to talk about. We are going to talk about the overview, the whole end-to-end process, right? And what everyone's roles and responsibilities are in that. We're going to talk about classification. Then we'll talk about recruitment, right? And we'll walk you through how to use HRC Power Recruiting and how to make a request in the portal. We'll talk about hiring and onboarding, right? The meat of that, and how to use USA Staffing, your role in that. Final reminders and Q&A. We'll talk more, we'll talk about some reminders, we'll give you some resources. We'll also, as I mentioned, have the USA Hire update, and then we'll do question and answer period. So, and then this slide deck will be provided to you all, which has lots of live links in there to different resources that we'll talk about and things like that. So we're hopeful that that's very helpful to you as well. All right, we can go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so an overview. As I mentioned earlier, Enterprise Services is using the applicant tracking system USA Staffing, and with this system, which is 1 year new to us, what we're striving to do there is provide candidates and hiring managers with a positive and improved experience through the implementation of this new talent acquisition and onboarding systems, right? New to the department. We're trying to improve visibility into that end-to-end hiring process for both hiring managers and candidates. And of course, accelerate the time to hire, including that onboarding process, right? We're trying to implement these standard, consistent processes and use advanced technology to keep that process, to decreasing the time that it takes and to tighten it up, right? So that we can get the folks on board doing the work that you need them to do. The first phase in the end-to-end recruitment and hiring process is classification, and that's when job descriptions are created. Next phase is called recruitment, and that's when the hiring manager will be using the job opportunity announcement, or JOA, posting to connect with candidates to support, your hiring and talent needs. And then finally, that final phase is hiring and onboarding, and that's when we have eligible qualified applicants that are placed on a certificate of eligibles, or the CERT, for selection, and then final selectees are onboarded into the department and the respective bureaus. So that's just kind of a high-level overview there. We can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is a slide that I include here because as a non-HR professional, right, sometimes we use terminology and I wonder, like, what is the difference between that? What is talent acquisition? Well, that means staffing. Well, does it really mean staffing? What is recruitment? What is hiring? Really just wanted to kind of educate everybody on this call about the difference between recruitment and hiring. Recruitment is that targeted and conscious effort, right, that we're taking at the department to find qualified and diverse candidates. Those activities are all of that strategic outreach to communities, right? And you all probably have communities or organizations that you look to kind of send candidates your way. There may be some, hiring fairs or college fairs and things like that you participate in. That's all recruitment activity, right? Hiring is that process that we now then go through of selecting and appointing that applicant through your open announcement at a given point in time. So hiring really doesn't begin until you have selected a candidate. So all that other stuff that we do, including, all of the glad handing out at career fairs and the networking and all of those things, right up to the point where you make a selection, are all called recruitment. So there's your little educational moment for today. Okay, so I'm a very visual person, and my hope is that in providing you these very busy visuals, you'll be able to use them later, right, to kind of refer back to and also to share with colleagues who might have questions. So I know this seems like a lot, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking through it, but what this is really just an overview of your responsibilities in the whole process, right, as a hiring manager or proxy. We're probably just going to say hiring manager as we go through, but understand that when I say hiring manager, I'm talking about whether you're the actual person who's hiring someone or whether you are serving as a proxy for someone, right? This is who I'm talking about. So you'll see here throughout this whole, you are so welcome, Donna. Thank you for the feedback. If you look here through, you'll see all of the different steps that are taken, okay? And we kind of break it down into classification. At the top of the box, you can see classification, recruitment, and then hiring and onboarding. We're going to dig into these as we go through, but I wanted to give you that overall large, high level overview of what you're going to actually be doing as you go through this process. And of course, because it's the federal government, there are a million little caveats at the bottom. One of the things I do want to point out is if you already have a classified PD package, you'll start at step 5, right? So if you don't have that, then you have to start at the very beginning. But if you have that classified PD package that you can use, then you start at step 5. But here down below, you'll see the little stars. If there's not an existing PD, you're going to have to submit a request for new classification via the portal, which we'll talk about. And then, of course, and this, you would think that we didn't have to say this, and I probably don't have to say this to anyone on this call, but budget approval is needed from your bureau to submit your recruitment request. We've had folks just like randomly decide that it was time to hire somebody and put in, requests in the portal. And we're looking at this and we're like, wow, I'm not sure that this, and like, has this received all the necessary approvals, right? And the person being new to federal government was like, oh, I didn't realize I had to do that. So that's why, right? As I said, we learn from every training that we conduct. We wanted to make sure that everyone, new or seasoned, is clear on the fact that we, Enterprise Services, can't authorize your budgetary dollars from your bureau. So please do make sure that you have that before you embark on this journey to hire. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so here's where we dig into the first chunk, right? Classification. Again, this is meant to be a handy tool for you after the training as well. So we've kind of called out some important things here in boxes and such. I do want to draw your attention to this little legend at the top of the slide, which shows you the color-coded ownership in this. Now we call it the future state. It's our current state now, right? But most of the time when we did this training, we were talking about a future state, or a new state at least. And it may still be new to a lot of you. But the blue boxes, that's you, hiring manager or proxy, right? Those are your responsibilities. Orange boxes, that's enterprise services. That's us, and that's any HR specialist that you're dealing with, because those folks are all enterprise services folks. And then not on this particular slide, but you'll see on other process maps, there'll be like a dark blue or gray circle, and that's going to be things that have to happen within your bureau. So here you'll see determine if a classification is needed. If it is, then you'll have to determine the type of classification needed. If it is a GS or FWS position, that's where you determine if there's a draft or existing PD that's available, right? And if there's not, then you're going to have to submit a request for new classification via the portal, which we're going to talk about. If it's CAPS, then you have to classify the PD in ACS, okay? And then number 3, right, that's when you submit your classification request in the portal. All right, so then once you submit your classification request in the portal, it comes to us, and that's when Enterprise Services coordinates, if needed, a classification alignment conversation. If we have questions about the classification or anything having to do with the duties and things and levels of, criteria for experience and things, we'll have a conversation with you about it. If it's not needed, then we'll go ahead and classify that PD, and then we move back to you, which is where you review and approve the PD. And then you're going to use, and there are, I will say this, I'm going to stop. There are a lot of acronyms in here. Don't worry, there's a chart, an acronym chart at the end of this deck in the appendix that will be provided to you. So no worries on that. But then you're going to use the PDT to populate the PDR. And then that's when Enterprise Services gets back the information to go ahead and build the job code in HR Connect. We sign the CD 516 and then return that entire fully classified PD package in the portal to you. And that is when the recruitment phase begins, okay? Now, we talked about this. If you have a fully classified PD, then this is really not something that you need to worry about, okay? Something that we get asked a lot, a classified PD package, what does that include, right? Well, here you'll see the current position description, right? Making sure that it's classified and validated. The signed CD 516 PD cover sheet. That needs to be signed by a classifier on the second page. That would be us, right? And then also the signed position designation record, which is what you use the position designation tool to populate, right? So you would go ahead and sign that. And then if you have a new classification, the OGE 450 determination is required. So these are things that need to be included in your package when you submit it via the portal to Enterprise Services, okay? All right, we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is the next phase, right? And this is what we call recruitment, phase 2, for a competitive recruitment. Hang on one second, I just saw something pop up in the chat. I want to make sure that I look at it. Okay, so thank you, Grace, for that clarification. So what Grace says here in the chat is that for NTIA, we typically have our HR specialists submit an enterprise service in the portal for us and serve as the POC on behalf of the hiring manager. So that's what we would call a proxy. Okay, so when I say you or hiring manager, yes, I'm talking about either yourself as a hiring manager, if your bureau or office uses liaisons or support folks to do these kinds of things, or an HR person, that's totally fine. Every bureau is different, I will say. And I am not going to make any kind of recommendations as to what you guys should do. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? If you guys have internal business processes that are working for you, that is certainly not our place to advise. So just kind of keep in mind that if you see something in blue here, it's either going to be yourselves or whoever in your office you all typically use as a POC. Thank you for making that clarification, though. I do appreciate it. All right, so now let's go back to the key here again. As I said, blue, hiring manager proxy, orange, HR specialist at enterprise services, and then dark gray or gunmetal looks kind of like, we'll call that the bureau, right? And so you can see here at the end there's a place for them to get involved. During recruitment, you may have positions where you're advised to utilize like certain assessments like panel interviews, other sorts of things based on the kind of position that you're filling to evaluate qualifications of an applicant. Okay, so that's going to definitely be on the bureau or you all to support all of that coordination, okay, based on your policies and procedures and so forth. So that's certainly something that you know, you all will handle internally, but that we definitely want to call that out there, that is something that you may want to do sometimes, depending on the position. Budget approval is needed to submit the recruitment request. Again, making sure that we note that here. And then again, another thing for me to call out here, the draft JA that Enterprise Services or job announcement that Enterprise Services creates will be sent to you in a portal request ticket, but any additional drafting will be facilitated over email. So you will be getting, we try to use the portal for accountability purposes, and certainly also you know, making sure that we can track things and make it easier and more trackable in the portal. But if there's a lot of editing needed and things, we'll do that over email. That was basically what I'm trying to say here. Okay, so let's go back to some of these blue steps. You're going to go ahead and submit the Power Recruiting request in HR Connect. Okay, and we're going to show you a brief video on how to do that here in a few minutes. Which is separate from the Enterprise Services portal, so bear with me. And then after that's complete, you're going to submit the recruitment request in the Enterprise Services portal. That does seem like a duplicative step, I agree. And here's why we have to do it like that. Right now, HR Connect and Enterprise Services portal do not speak to each other in the way that we need to, so that we would only have to do the recruitment request once. So that's why the recruitment request goes into HR Connect, and then we also need to flag it for ourselves in the portal. So apologies for that somewhat duplicative step there. It only takes a few minutes, and we're going to show you how to do it in this training. But for right now, unfortunately, the systems aren't integrated in such a way that allows it to just flow directly into our tracking system. So just wanted to explain that, because we used to get that question a lot, like, why are we doing this twice? I wish you didn't have to, but unfortunately right now that's the reality. All right, then Enterprise Services is going to coordinate the strategic conversation. Make sure we get all the information that we need from you, you know, to get this JA squared away and make sure that it accurately reflects the needs of your organization and a candidate. Enterprise Services will then develop the job announcement and the assessments based on your feedback, and then we'll send it to you via the portal. It's going to come to you. You're going to go ahead and review and approve it, and then you're going to send it back to us. We will then again review your feedback, the approval. We'll make sure everything is together. And put it into a recruitment package and approve that. We'll go ahead and clear that. We'll develop the job opportunity announcement. I'm sorry, you know what? I was saying job announcement earlier. I meant job analysis. I apologize. There's so many acronyms. The job analysis then becomes part of the recruitment package. Then Enterprise Services is going to develop the job opportunity announcement and configure those assessments, right? And this is probably sounding familiar to you because we used to do all this stuff and get it in Monster, right? Now we are using USA Staffing. Then you're going to review and approve that job opportunity announcement. It's going to come to you. You're going to go ahead and review and approve that job opportunity announcement, or JOA. That's in USA Staffing, okay? So now you're using the system in USA Staffing, and then Enterprise Services will review that. Make sure, again, that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and that all the appropriate items are included in there, and then we will post it. So we then post it. It goes up on USA Jobs, right? When it closes, we take everything back. We review the applications for eligibility. We conduct the minimum quals, right? Make sure that we've got a group of candidates that meets all of the needs and the things that have been identified previously. At that point, if there's assessments or panels or other things that you all have specified are needed at this point, then those things will be conducted, and that will be up to you all to do them. And then once that's all completed, Enterprise Services will develop the certificate of eligibles. Well, that's a lot of action that takes place in that area there. I do see someone with their hand raised. Yes, ma'am.
This is Grace. Hi. So the in the job analysis phase, what you're looking for, it sounds like the early stages, what you're looking for is essentially you're providing that check that we're not creating a job that is unrealistic or doesn't make sense, or it's this form of a check and balance, right? So you're looking for, what are you looking for when you're doing the job analysis, or what are you looking for in that job assessment, generally speaking?
Yeah, I'm going to invite Sandy or Sheila to answer that question. I think that's a great question.
Hey, Tracy.
Hey.
I can answer that question. Great. So when we do a job analysis, the hiring manager and the TA specialist typically can work together. And what that job analysis does is you're describing the major duties of the position, and you're also outlining the competencies or the knowledge, skills, and abilities, we call them KSAs, that an individual will need to perform the position. And then there's typically, I'm going to call it the occupational questionnaire. It's where the hiring manager is detailing questions to assess the applicant's experience. And how that relates to the JOA is when you're applying for a position, you have to meet the specialized experience, and then they have to complete the occupational questionnaire. And that's where applicants are self-assessing themselves based on the questions developed by the hiring manager. And behind that scene are scores. And those scores determine who is best qualified and who gets referred on a certificate.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'd like to chime in here too also, that this is why it's extremely important for the hiring managers and their proxies, as well as the HR liaison from our office, OPCM, to participate in that strategic conversation meeting with Enterprise Services, so they can get that background knowledge of the vacancies that we have to fill and what we're looking for, so they can develop that job analysis.
Great. Thank you both so much thanks for the question, and thanks both of you for chiming in. Okay, you got some applause on that, guys. That was really good. All right. I think we can go ahead and go to the next slide, Lauren. Okay, so we'll talk about competitive hiring and onboarding now. And you'll notice that the word competitive is here, and that I had competitive on the last slide too. There's a difference between competitive and non-competitive hiring, as you may know. What we're really talking about today is the competitive hiring process. The other way to do things is a lot simpler and doesn't require a lot of this sort of, well, it doesn't require all of this interaction and is different. And we actually outline it on the Enterprise Services portal. We have knowledge articles that will walk you through how to do that. And you can certainly reach out to us with questions at any time. But for purposes of our training, we're really focusing in on that competitive hiring, which is where you have to go out and put out, a vacancy announcement and get a cert and things of that nature. It's a little bit different when it's a non-competitive situation. So, okay. Let's talk about the first step here, which is accessing and reviewing the certificate of eligibles in USA Staffing. Okay, very similar to, actually better, but similar to what we used to do in Monster before, right? Where you go in and access your cert. You're going to look at all of your candidates that you've been provided. You may have more than one cert, depending on, if you had different hiring authorities and things like that. You can check out everyone. Decide who you want to interview and talk to, and go ahead and schedule and conduct your interviews. Now, of course, we were kind of deep in the throes of, still in the throes of COVID, so we weren't really talking about in-person interviews at the time. You're welcome to conduct your interviews however you like, email, phone, in person, whatever works for your organization. Then you're going to annotate your selection and return that certificate of eligibles via USA Staffing. Okay, we will then pick it up. You can see here we're moving to orange, that's enterprise services. We'll then pick it up, review that cert with your selection, and then we'll go ahead and extend the TJO or temporary job offer to the selectee. Okay, you will be notified once the temporary job offer has been extended. Next, if the applicant requests negotiation, we're going to notify you. Okay, now I'll say this. You all should have coordinated what you want to do with negotiation ahead of time within your bureau. I'm sure you have guidelines and things, maybe by position that you're filling, or maybe you just have standard policies and things, but that's not something that we get involved in. That is something that will have to be coordinated in your bureau, okay? And then we will initiate that security process in OSY, the Office of Security. So that's all of the equip and all of that stuff. We'll get that started. Once everything has been negotiated, I guess we'll call it, if that's necessary, then we'll go ahead and extend the FJO or the final job offer. Again, you will be notified when that has happened. And then we will coordinate the start date with you, with the losing agency, with the candidate, however that's appropriate. We will take care of that. And then we will go ahead and conduct the department-wide orientation, which includes that I-9 verification. So we will handle all of that sort of paperwork, right? The benefits and things like that. We'll get all of that initiated with folks. Then we will hand them over to you for any sort of bureau-specific orientation. You may have an NTIA orientation. You may have internal office orientations, whatever those kinds of things that take place in your bureau, that would then become your responsibility at that point. Okay, so again, we've got that little note down here. Allocation of bureau funding and incentives is the responsibility of the bureau. So you guys will have to have that plan in place for what you want to do if that arises. And then again, a good time to talk about that is during the strategic conversation, right? Because that's when, as Sandy mentioned, right, you're kind of understanding the whole universe of things around this particular position. And then if, negotiation happens, then we can allocate that then. Okay. All right. I think we can go ahead and go to the next slide. All right. So we kind of did a big overview of the different process maps for the different sections. We're going to dig in a little bit more on these. And actually, you know what? I am going to just take a look here in the chat just to make sure there's nothing like super relevant to what we were talking about. I don't want to miss an opportunity to answer anything that's like applicable to that.
Oh, Tracy, I think Derek had a question about an SME fitting into the process around qualified candidates or cert list. I think in this case, maybe the SME is the hiring manager, and you would include both the hiring manager and the HR specialist in conversations like this. I'm not sure.
Derek, welcome to come off mute and give us some clarity on that so that we make sure we're answering your question properly.
Sure. Hey, no problem. Hi, and thanks for this. No, my question is simply because we have, I think, sometimes used SMEs, and my understanding was they're part of, looking at the applications that come in and advising, with subject matter expertise to, potentially contribute to decisions on who makes the cert, right? Because we've had cases where we get the cert and then, we may know people who've applied who didn't make it, and we're like, wow, we know that was a perfect candidate. What happened? And, so sometimes I know you talked about making sure that you can do a lot up front to really talk about, what we're looking for in the candidate beyond just maybe what's technically written in the announcement. But we certainly have seen people fall through the cracks, right? So yeah. I thought that's what I think that in the strategic conversation or checklist, there is the option to request an SME. So I just thought that maybe, wasn't mentioned here, but I'm assuming that still is an option, right?
So Tracy, I can speak to this.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So Derek, so I want to back up a little bit because I want to go back to what Lisa said, right? It's really important for the hiring managers to be involved in the job analysis. But to give you some more HR rules and regs, SMEs can be used, right? They're subject matter experts. They're typically not the hiring manager. And SMEs are used to determine best qualified candidates. Minimum qualifications are determined by human resources staff. Basic quals start with the specialized experience defined in the vacancy announcement. And even though applicants may be very well qualified, if their resume does not reflect the specialized experience defined in the vacancy announcement, they will not be deemed qualified. Now, when I was talking about the job analysis and the questions and the points, as they self-assess themselves, that's what drives the score. Under merit promotion procedures, which is when we're advertising to current federal employees or those with non-competitive eligibility, they have to be best qualified, they have to score 90 and above. So if they don't score 90 and above but they've met the specialized experience, they will not be referred on a certificate. Under delegated examining, they have to be in the gold category to be referred on a certificate. And there are some exceptions to that with veterans preference. Our CP and our CPS veterans for certain series will automatically float to the gold category and be referred on a certificate as long as they meet the specialized experience. So we do, I know that's probably too much, but I just wanted you to understand the process because it really all ties together.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. And then, so the SME would come in after that point. You're saying once you have those who are qualified, then they could be involved in determining the best qualified.
The best qualified.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And
Thanks,
if Sheila,
Sandy.
and I was going to say, and Sheila, please feel free to add if there's anything else that I missed.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Sandy, thank you, that is also depending upon the series of the job that SMEs, are asked to assist. For instance, some of our administrative and professional series, our management program analysts or our 301s, that's not normally a situation where we ask for or need SME participation. So it does vary according to the series and titles of the job.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friends and colleagues. You guys have the two most knowledgeable people about talent acquisition on the line right now. So this is really good. And Sandy, I appreciate you going into so much detail because this is being recorded and they can use this later, right? So this is great. Thank you guys so much. All right, so we're going to dig in a little bit on classification. You'll see here, here are the major steps, right? Your activities as a hiring manager or proxy. First, you're going to determine the type of classification that's needed. If the position's a CAPS position, you're going to classify the PD in ACS and use that PD tool to populate the PDR prior to submitting your classification request. It's in the system, so it's somewhat automated. For GS and FWS, you're going to determine if a draft or existing PD is available. You're going to submit that classification request in the portal. You're going to review and approve the PD that ES prepares for you, and then you're going to use the PDT to populate a PDR. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide, Lauren. Thank you. Okay, so what do you need to submit with a classification request? Kind of talked a little bit about this earlier. But basically, the documentation you need to attach is based on the position or the type of position that you're classifying. So if it's a new GS and FWS position, your required documentation is a draft PD or list of duties and responsibilities, the CD 516 with page 1 completed, and an OGE 450 determination. You may need supporting documentation such as an org chart, function mission statement, That's not always needed, but sometimes it is requested or required. So that would be something that you could submit as well. Now, if this is a modified GS or FWS position, your required documentation is the modified PD, the signed CD516 with page 2 filled out, and a signed PDR. And then finally, for CAPS positions, you upload the classified PD from the automated classification system, which I've mentioned, ACS, the signed position designation record, the PDR, the draft CD516, and an org chart or other helpful documents that help the classifier better process your request. I always say add as many things in there as you think they'll need, because if they have everything they need, they can classify your position more quickly, right? There's less questions and so forth. So again, hopefully this is a helpful visual representation of what the heck we're talking about when we need you to upload documentation with your classified request. All right. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So we talked about what's required, right? Now, optional things, major duties and specialized experience, the job analysis sometimes, and the organizational structure. Again, not always needing all of these things, but it's good to mention them. That way, if someone does ask you for them, it's not completely out of left field, right? Okay, so Lauren is going to show us how to initiate a classification request on the portal. Let's give her a minute to toggle over to the portal environment so that she can go ahead and do this for us today.
Thanks, Tracy. I do need a sec. I just have to load that stage environment. Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, you can see the portal.
Yep, we can see. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and walk through how to submit a classification request on the portal. So you will start by navigating to the portal. Before you do any of that, though, please make sure that you are connected to a department network or to the VPN. If not, the portal just won't load up. And if for some reason you hit like a not connected screen, you can just go ahead, close your browser, and then reopen it to access the portal. But once you're here, you're gonna go to our service bar, which is this blue bar in the center of our homepage. And then you'll go to request services, and this request services link will take you to our entire service catalog. Oh, and for the purpose of today, I might have clicked something a little too quick. Okay, so for the purpose of today, we're going to go ahead and go to this catalogs drop down on the left. We're going to go to human resources. And then we're going to look at this menu on the left again and select talent acquisition. All right, so here you'll actually just go ahead and select the submit classification tile. I know Tracy said this, but I want to emphasize if you already have a classified PD package, you can go straight to the submit hiring recruitment request form, which is that second tile on the previous screen. But for today, let's go ahead and run through this form. So we're going to begin by selecting your role under the I am requesting the service as a field. If you are a proxy, you would select employee, and then here you would search the manager that you're representing. We're just going to be a manager today, make things easy. Then we'll go to the classification action type. Here is where you can select the recruit actions, which will be for a new PD, or you can do a pen and ink change if you need to modify a data element. I just want to quickly show you that they actually present different menus in the following field, which is that classification field. So for a pen and ink change, you're just going to scroll through these menu options and just select what's changing. But again, for the purpose of today, we're doing a new PD. So next, we'll go ahead and select new position. And then under the classification identification field, you would select this for a priority program. In our case, we're not doing that, so we're going to scroll down and select not applicable. But if you, again, are doing a recruitment action for like the ARPA, you would select that priority program. But again, this is not applicable. Okay, so we're scrolling down, and at this stage, you're not going to have, or it's likely you will not have a job code or a position number. So these fields are optional. You can leave them blank and still submit your classification service request. So for now, we'll go ahead and leave them blank, and we'll move to the next asterisk, which is the effective date. You just want to choose the date that you want this classification to be effective on. For the purpose of today, I'm just going to go ahead and select a few months down the line. October 16th looks good to me. And then we'll select the pay plan. So whether that's the GS, FWS, or the CAPS pay plan, you'll go ahead and select that. We're going to select the GS pay plan. And then you will, in this comment box, you're going to want to note anything you want Enterprise Services to know about this classification. So I'll just do test for now, but you'll put something in this comment box. You'll go ahead and confirm that you've attached all of the appropriate documentation, which in this case is going to be that OGE 450. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up super quick. Okay, and do a cursory review before hitting submit, make sure everything looks right, and then you're ready to submit your classification to Enterprise Services. Once you hit submit, you'll see this ticket open. You can come back to this ticket to check the status of your classification. And then you can also communicate with your servicer or your TA specialist in this activity box by simply typing into this comment box. So we can just do hello. Alrighty, so that's going to conclude the classification demo. Tracy, I'm going to switch screens back to the slide deck, but I also need a second for that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks for that. So hopefully you can see that that's pretty intuitive. And again, there's lots of resources on the portal. So if you need extra help or you need more information, there's a lot of ways that you can get that information right on there. There's a lot of knowledge articles and things. But hopefully you found that somewhat intuitive. I love that there are drop-down menus there and that you can do pending changes to an existing PD on there. They've done a pretty good job of trying to consider everything in there. Okay, we're on to recruitment. Next slide, ma'am. All right. So again, here are your key activities as a hiring manager or proxy when it comes to recruitment. You're going to submit your Power Recruiting request in HR Connect. You're going to then submit your recruitment request in the portal. We'll demonstrate that as well. You're going to review and approve the job analysis that's prepared by Enterprise Services. And then you're going to review and approve the JOA or job opportunity announcement in USA Staffing. So you'll be using the portal and USA Staffing during the recruitment phase. All right, now we're going to look closer at the HR Connect request process. Okay, if you've not used HR Connect Power Recruiting before, Power Recruiting, yes, I love it. It's a little, it's almost like a bot. Like you go through it and it asks you questions. I'll demonstrate it with a little video here shortly, but it's very intuitive and easy to use. It's a wizard actually, and you can go ahead and submit your recruitment actions for standard recruitments, special appointment authorities, and direct hires, and then of course pathways or those student appointments. Once you begin Power Recruiting Wizard to submit a recruitment, you must complete the wizard. So this is something, and if you use HR Connect often, you'll know this. HR Connect does not allow you to save information if you don't complete something. So if you don't go all the way through the wizard and then hit, submit and then get like that indicator that it's been submitted, you will lose the work that you've done. So just make sure that you've set aside a little bit of time to go ahead and complete the whole request in the wizard when you do that. Okay, we can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Okay, this slide shows the differences, okay, between the manager and proxy views. So if you are not the hiring manager, your screens are going to look a little bit different. So we try to kind of show the differences here. To fill an empty position, whether it's vacated or newly created, you're going to create that power recruiting request to begin the recruitment process. If you're a hiring manager, you're going to initiate a requisition request by navigating to the My Team tile on your landing page, right? So you can see that here in that upper graphic. If you are a proxy, you're going to select the Proxy Actions tile from your main landing page, and then you're going to select people and positions of the appropriate manager for whom you are submitting that recruitment package, okay? So once you get through all of that, then you're going to be looking at something that's very similar, whether you're a proxy or a manager. All righty. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Awesome. Okay, so once you're in My Teams or the Proxy Actions, in the case of a proxy, you're going to select Vacant Positions. I tried to make this as easy as possible. There's the blue arrow down there, Vacant Positions. Go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, and here we are. When you get to this page, you're going to select a vacant position to be filled, or you can establish a new position. Next, you're going to review the vacant positions that are listed on your page to identify which one you want to fill. If it doesn't exist, you would create a new position so that you could begin the recruitment process. Okay, we're going to, for purposes of this, we're going to pretend that we're selecting a vacant position. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. All right. Once the vacant position has been selected, you're going to review the duties outlined for the position. Again, I'll just remind you, if you begin a power recruiting case, please finish it in the entire process because it doesn't save your information. Once you've verified that this is the right one that you want to fill, you can go ahead and select To Power Recruiting to initiate the steps. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Sorry, there we go. Okay, so it's like a 9-page wizard. This is the first step. I'm not really going to spend a ton of time on this because we do have a quick little video. It's actually, HR Connect actually has a lot of great tools and training resources on their page, so we kind of stole it from them. But I just wanted to kind of show you there's 9 steps to the wizard. It's very intuitive. The things that you do on here are, you know, choose your advertising area, commuting area, choose the duration of how long you want to advertise, what type of appointment is it, what work schedule, if it's shift work, right? If it's telework eligible. I do want to note here though that when you designate whether or not it's telework eligible, that merely means that the position is eligible. That does not take into consideration, you know, policies and so forth in your organization about telework, remote work, you know, situational, all of the things, right? This just means that that position is eligible. So you're not committing your organization to anything in particular. It just means that this position is eligible, okay? And then whether or not you're going to provide moving expenses. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And then here's step 2. You're going to go ahead and choose the occupational series here and go ahead and go to the next slide. Great. Review this page, make sure if it's a career ladder position that you're selecting any additional grades here. Identify the target grade. That's very important. That is the highest grade for this position. So if it was just a band 3, you can see here band 3 is the only one. If it was a career ladder and it was a band 2, band 3, we would also make sure that we indicated down here on the bottom one that band 3 was the highest, right? FPL, or full performance level grade, is band 3. Okay, so we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Step 4, advertising sources. You can see here, you know, if there's other, this is mainly information. We know it's going to go up on USA Jobs, right? And that's what we're responsible for. But this is, again, information, and just to kind of put in there, you know, what other ways are you going to be getting candidates for this position? You can put that in this area here. And go ahead and go to the next slide. Step 5, you're going to check your location, your state, your city, any of those things, right? And this selecting official number down here will populate automatically with the employee ID number of the manager who will actually be hiring the person. So that should be what that'll auto-populate, should be in there. can go ahead and go next. Text in the help. Okay, yeah. So here is information that, okay. You're going to have an opportunity here to describe unique qualities of the position, right? Things that you want to make sure you note here to attract that talent. What is attractive to a potential employee? So here's where you're going to put things about, NTIA is a fantastic place to work. We have this incredible mission. We have a great cafeteria. Parking is not as expensive as other places. Whatever you want to motivate folks to apply for your job, you can put there. I definitely wouldn't note the parking. It's so expensive. You can go ahead and go to the next step. Okay. Did we skip step 7? Can we go back one? Okay, yeah. Yes, okay, so we did. We accidentally skipped the slide. Here we go. This is step 7. So we talked on the previous page of the wizard, we talked about, making this attractive to the candidate that you want. Now we're going to talk about what you want in a candidate. So here's an opportunity to kind of really provide, what you're looking for. It's not a competencies conversation, but it's kind of, letting them know what the ideal candidate will have to be successful in your organization. Sorry, it's after lunch. I'm usually more eloquent than this, but that's where this, and that's not the competencies yet. That comes next. So we can go ahead and go to step 8. Okay, so here is that more nitty-gritty opportunity for you to list specific qualifications that an applicant has to have to be considered for the position. So on the last page, we talked about, what your ideal candidate will look like, but this is where you set those minimum standards so the staffing specialist can really screen those applicants, right? So anything like specialized experience here, selective placement factors, licensing and credentialing requirements, language requirements maybe, that's what goes in this box here on step 8, okay? It is not required for this process, but you're able to include all those details here. All right, so after you do this, you definitely want to enter anybody you think you would want to be notified of this recruit request. So in that email notification field, enter email addresses separately with a comma there, but there's no limitation on how many email addresses to put in there. So go ahead and make sure that, if there's anybody that needs to know what's going on with this, that you put it in there, okay? And then we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Step 9, we're almost done. Here is where you will have the option to send this recruit request to your report output page of HR Connect. That is a best practice. Always, always select yes to have that Power Recruiting request added to your report output page. Once you select yes, HR Connect generates a PDF of the recruit request, and you can find it in your reports tile on the home page. Very, very nice to have that, especially if you do more than one of these. It's very quick and easy for you to be able to go back and reference that if you've got that in your reports tile. All right, then you're going to specify whether or not this is a backfill. Backfill should also be selected if you're hiring for a position that's still encumbered by an employee, right? Somebody gives their notice and says, I'm leaving in 2 months. You want to begin recruitment for that, understanding that, there's a lot of things that have to happen. So you can go ahead and designate that as a backfill too if you begin the process. Once you note that, please include the position number in the comments or instructions section along with individuals who be involved in the hiring process, okay? Emails, phone numbers of the hiring manager, any other comments associated with the recruitment case. Then you're going to select the appropriate authorizer to whom you should route the Power Recruiting request. You need at least 1 level of authorization for all requests before it comes to us. First authorizer is the next level supervisor of the submitter. If you don't put anyone else in there, it's automatically going to get routed to ES. So you may have internal business policies, and I know that your HR liaisons and your POCs will be able to guide you on this as to who needs to go there and how many levels of authorization are required. Okay, but once it is good to go, you're going to go ahead and submit and select submit. And we go to the next slide. There we go. Here's the message you want to see. Now you know, okay, it's in. I can step away and refill my coffee. or whatever it is that you need to do, because now you have a request number, and that means this is done. That number is super important. Go ahead and write that down, because you're going to need it again when you go into the portal to put in your recruitment request there. So you can go ahead and select OK here. And we can go to the next slide. Excellent. Okay, so to just kind of confirm and validate everything I just showed you, we have this really quick little video that walks you through the actual wizard, recorded by, like I said, HR Connect. The voice is a little bit wooden, but you kind of, it just basically goes through very quickly what I just showed you to kind of reinforce that. So I'll mute Lauren, and you can go ahead and unmute and share your video.
Sure. I'll just confirm once I started that everyone can hear the audio.
Okay, thanks.
This video will demonstrate how to initiate a recruitment action and start the process of posting a vacancy announcement. Let's get started. Navigate to the My Team page. Select the vacant positions icon or link. Select the appropriate vacant position. Select the To Power Recruiting button. Complete page 1 as necessary. And select the Next button. Add additional series if necessary. Then select the Next button. Select the grade or grades you wish to recruit for, the target grade. And then select the Next button. Enter the appropriate information. And select the Next button. Select the country if necessary, state, city, and number of openings. Change the selecting official if necessary. Then select the Next button. Enter necessary information. And select the Next button to proceed. Select the Next button. Enter specialized experience and email addresses if appropriate. Then select the Next button. Enter comments if necessary. Choose the next appropriate approver. Select the Submit button and OK button to finish the process. You can find additional information in the instructions and FAQ portions of this job aid. Thank you for watching.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Okay, so I'm just looking at the time, and we've got about 28 minutes left. We did answer some questions throughout, so that's why we're a little bit behind our normal schedule, but I'm going to kind of speed up my facilitation so that we get to the important stuff. So here we're going to talk a little bit about submitting a hiring recruitment request in the portal, okay? And Lauren is actually going to demonstrate this in the portal here in a couple minutes. But basically, after the request is submitted in HR Connect Power Recruiting, you're going to submit the hiring recruitment request on the portal. And your TA specialist is going to contact you once they get that request. But we're going to walk through this, how to do it. Lauren's going to go ahead and go back to the environment in the portal to show you exactly how to do that. The only thing I would say, Lauren, is just like don't spend a lot of extra time on like navigating. I would just go right to how to submit that, since we can bring them right to the request, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Let me get that loaded. I'm going to stop sharing my screen momentarily and we'll dive right into it.
Thank you.
So yeah, we're following that same trajectory of getting back to the talent acquisition tab under our request services. And we're going to go ahead and click the submit hiring and recruitment request tile. This is going to follow a similar trajectory of we have some mandatory fields and we're going to go ahead and complete them. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to act as a manager. Then we'll go ahead and select the recruitment action type. This is going to be competitive or non-competitive recruitment actions. So for competitive, you can select backfill competitive or new position competitive. And then for non-competitive actions, you can go ahead and select if it's a public notice flyer, if it's a quals review only, or if you want to proceed with a quals review and the TJO. For the purpose of this, we're going to select the new competitive new position competitive, sorry. Then as before, we're going to select the recruitment identification if this is for a priority hiring priority program hiring. That's a tongue twister. For the purpose of this, it's not going to be applicable, but as you're going through, make sure you select the appropriate programs. Then we'll go to the position number. You may or may not have it at this time, so if you do, please go ahead and input that. We're just going to do a test number, and I'm getting really creative here with my numbering. Alrighty, so then we're going to go ahead and select that expected start date. That is an optional field as well if you have it. If you don't, you can go ahead and leave it blank. Let's just leave it blank for now. Then we'll go ahead and fill in that recruitment request number. And again, going to just use a good old test number. Input the job code as well. So I'm going to input a test job code. And this needs to be, the budget needs to be approved and received. So go ahead and check that box if that applies. Then as the hiring manager, I'm acting as a hiring manager. So if you are a hiring manager, just find yourself in this search. But if you were acting as a proxy, I think you guys saw above, it let me choose manager or employee. If you're a proxy, you'll select employee, and then you'll input the hiring manager that you're acting on behalf of here. So let's go ahead and do, oops. All right, so we'll act as a hiring manager. These fields are optional, so you can input the position title. And then for the contact phone number, you would input that for the hiring manager that you're representing. So let's go ahead and do a test number. Alrighty, so for your human capital business partner, you can go ahead and input, if you're a proxy, that manager again, or if there's another person that you would like on as this business partner, you can just go ahead and look them up here. And we'll use a test user here as well. Alrighty, and then their information will auto-populate. Alrighty, and then you'll select, finally we're getting close to the end here, but you'll select the line office. And in this case, it will be Enterprise Services. As per usual, if there is any information that you want Enterprise Services to know, it's just very pertinent to this action, make sure that you put those details in the comment box. And then select that you, and confirm actually that you have attached all the required documentation. Specifically in this case, the completed PD package should be uploaded as well as the resume. I'm just going to do a test file here. All right, that was a bit of a speed round, but do a quick cursory review. Make sure all the information required is filled in. Then go ahead and hit submit. Alrighty, so you have submitted your recruitment request. You can come back to the ticket again to communicate with a TA specialist, or if you need to add any other attachments, hopefully you don't need to do that. You get it all in one, but you're totally able to do that within the ticket.
Thank you. That was great. Thanks for doing that. All right. So next we're going to talk about accessing USA Staffing. I'll just talk while Lauren's switching back. Before we walk through the JOA review process, we're going to throw up a quick slide to show you how to find the USA Staffing from the portal. Yes. Okay. So you can find it on the portal homepage. If you go ahead and navigate to the Human Resources dropdown on the top left of the page, you'll select USA Staffing under Quick Links, and you can see we've got our handy dandy light blue arrows here to show you with a little red box around USA Staffing. So that's how you can find it quickly. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so once you log into USA Staffing, you're going to see the hiring manager dashboard, which is shown here. From this page, you can view hiring actions as well as search for any specific requests. Go ahead and go to the next slide. This slide's a view of the hiring manager dashboard, and you can see that there are different review types that can be assigned to you, including the job opportunity announcement or JOA review that we're going to talk about now. Next slide. All right, so we'll walk quickly through the JOA review process. Once the TA specialist, right, which is the enterprise services person that's assigned to your case, completes the JOA and it's submitted in USA Staffing, you're going to get an email notifying you that it's done and ready for your review. To navigate to USA Staffing so you can review the JOA, you have two choices. You can either select the link that's in the email, or you can directly log into the USA Staffing system. So if you go into USA Staffing to do it, you're going to navigate to the assignments tile on the hiring manager dashboard where you can see the review type that you have been assigned. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide. In this scenario, you've been assigned a JOA to review, so you select that job title. You can see there's a black arrow. We switched it up a little. You can go ahead and select the job title to review the JOA. A pop-up will appear with instructions and considerations to keep in mind when reviewing the JOA. So these are great little boxes, help boxes. You can review that, and then you can select close to get rid of it. Next slide. After you clear that pop-up, that's when your JOA opens for review, okay? You're gonna have that opportunity to view the instructions again whenever you want. You can review any attached documents, read or add any notes to the JOA. Once you've reviewed it, including any documents and notes and things, you can select the approval statuses drop-down menu. Here you're going to be able to indicate if it's incomplete, approved, approved pending changes, or in some cases, rejected. For the purpose of today's training, select approved and then next. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. You're going to see here, I know you can see this, right? There's a lot of instructions and arrows and blue boxes. We did this because, again, we know you're going to want this deck. We want to give it to you, and we want you to be able to use it by yourself, right? Or to share it with a friend or a colleague and still be able to walk through it and know what you're supposed to do. So I realize I'm kind of reading the slide to you, but I want to make sure that you're clear on the process, but we also wanted to provide you with all the things, right, in case you couldn't attend this training or in case you forget what you're supposed to be doing. So again, here, pretty self-explanatory. Save, hit return to HR. Again, you'll be prompted to make sure that you do indeed want to return it to us. You click it again. Go to the next slide, please. Okay. The system refreshes and it's going to return you to the hiring manager dashboard. So now we're going to talk about key activities in the hiring and onboarding phase. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, next. Here we go. We're on the home stretch, guys. Key hiring manager activities in the hiring and onboarding phase. This is the fun part. You get to access and review your cert in USA Staffing. Look at all the wonderful people that you have to choose from. Then you're going to schedule and conduct your interviews, either in person, email, phone, however you prefer to do so. You're going to annotate and return your cert in USA Staffing, and you're going to coordinate, negotiate all the things, right, with the Bureau. And that's something that you'll do in conjunction with your colleagues and your HR liaison. All right, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Once all levels of applicant review are completed by the TA specialist, they're going to assign that certificate to you. You will receive an email notifying you that the applicant list is ready for review. Same way you did with the JOA, right? You can either open the applicant list right from the email that you get, or you can go to USA Staffing and get in there from there so that you can start looking at it. Okay. To open the applicant list review, you're going to select that URL and review it from the assignments page. So go ahead and select the link or job title. Go to the next slide. When you open that review for the first time, our instructions, any instructions that we added there for you, are going to be visible. If you close the instructions, you need to open them again. You can always select View Instructions. So that's always there for you. You just don't have to have it open. You can use the View Announcement tab to open a copy of the announcement in a new browser window. Documents and Notes tabs are also helpful for referencing additional information or documentation for the review. Just keep in mind, anything you add and save is viewable by the HR office, any other reviewers, if you're sharing this cert or if you have several people who are going to be reviewing the candidates, it becomes part of the case file. So just keep that in mind. Anything that you put in there is going to become part of the case file. All right, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. You can see here again, it's just a screen. If you want to review our cert, select the corresponding cert number and select the review lists. Okay. When you're ready to select an applicant, go ahead and select the Make Selections button. That's a lot of selecting. I apologize for that, but we'll try to use the right words. Go ahead and select Make Selections button to the left of that person's name. To document your selection decision for an individual applicant, select the dropdown in the Selection Decision box. Choose the appropriate decision. Is it selected? Alternate selection? Not selected, right? Just like we did in Monster from that dropdown menu. As a best practice, we always tell you to include your alternate selection in case that first person declines. As we know, this is a hot job market, right? Especially for certain career fields. So I would actually recommend that you put in your more than one alternate in there, okay? Because what that does is it saves time. If the first person that you've chosen does not want the job, your TA specialist has the next person in line and then even one more if needed, right? So it's always a good best practice to designate those folks right from the get-go. That way also, it's all fresh in your mind, right? I mean, you might make notes to yourself or you and your colleagues may know who you want and so forth, but just saves so much time here. Okay, if you want to document that alternate selection, like we've mentioned, there's an order there. You can make sure that you include the selection order and then the hiring action number. And there's an option to designate more than one alternate, as I mentioned, in order of preference if you want to do that. So you can just do all of that in this system. We are going to document any declinations or withdrawals. And once your selection steps are complete, go ahead and select Save. And we can go to the next slide. Once your selection is saved, the system's going to ask you if you want to begin the onboarding process. If you have any additional selections to make, you're going to see a notification that HR has been notified of your selection. On the applicant list screen, you're going to select the approval status in the bottom right corner and select Next. The following message appears and you'll see Return to HR. You're going to go ahead and select that. Okay. Once the selection decisions for all your certificates are documented, select the Back to Assignments button located in the bottom right corner of the page. The status for each of your completed certificates is going to show in green. If anything shows incomplete in red text, that means the approval status is not yet complete, right? So you know, like we all do, a lot of times you get many certificates for one position for which you're only selecting one person. This is just telling you need to go back and make sure once you've selected your choice and your alternates, go back and close out all the other certs and make sure that you've indicated all the other people are not selected, okay? If you have the permission to return the certificate, you're going to see a pop-up box that says all review assignments are complete. The review is ready to be returned to HR. Go ahead and select Return to HR. It's going to send the review back to us, and it'll no longer be available for you or any others to make comments. And the reason I say if you have permission is many times, right, we're sharing a cert or we have lots of people that are looking at it. If you're not the person that is the one to, make that final decision, then you may not see that box, that's all. Okay, once the review is returned, you're going to be invited to complete a survey about your experience with the hiring action. It's voluntary and confidential. We highly encourage you to take a few minutes to complete it because those results are used by OPM and each agency to make changes to the hiring process, right? So that we can continue improving the quality and timeliness of the applicants referred. So always, always take the survey. All right, now we are going to transition to another embedded video. Again, we try to use the resources that are provided. So USA Staffing recorded this video It's actually part of a longer one, but I really found this to be helpful because, you know, talking about it and then actually seeing it sometimes enforces, you know, the your familiarity with it. The only thing I'll say here is that this was recorded right before they made a couple of changes to the dashboard, so it may look a little bit different than the actual system, but the steps are all the same. Okay, Lauren, go ahead.
So I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to the hiring manager side to show you what they would see when they receive a certificate review. So when I send the review, that a hiring manager will be notified via email, letting them know that, hey, HR user so-and-so sent you a review for so-and-so. And they will know that they can click on the link within that email to log into USA Staffing and be able to take action on that review. When they first log into USA Staffing, if they click the review link, they will be taken straight into that review. But if they just log in without following that link, if they bookmark the page, for example, this will be the first page they see. This is the hiring manager dashboard. And this dashboard is where we have a variety of different information included as a glance for hiring managers. Things like, okay, which reviews have you not completed yet? Which one have you completed? Which hiring actions did you make? Which selections did you indicate? And where are they at in the process? And which, you know, requests did you submit? We call those hiring actions. So for reviews, this is where I can locate my certificate review that I sent earlier. This is also where I can see a JOA review. So that JOA review that I had sent over earlier, this is where this is located. The instructions that I populated are shown here when I first logged in. And I can go through each section of the review to indicate whether or not I'm okay with the questions that were going to be included in my assessment questionnaire. If I approve them without changes, I just change this approval status to approved and click next, and it opens up the next section for me. Here I have the announcement text, and I can recommend edits, and it works a little bit like track changes. As I'm typing, any information that I type is in green, and if I hover over it, it'll tell me who added it and when. If I have multiple reviewers reviewing a JOA, each one of them will get a different color. And this information is viewable by the HR user when that review has been returned. So once they've completed all of the review assignments, they all have a little green check mark. They can return that review to HR, and HR can take appropriate action. This JOA review feature comes in handy if you have a process by which your hiring managers get to say whether or not they're happy with the announcement before that announcement is released to USA Jobs. The other type of review that I want to take a look at is the certificate review. So this is, again, for that announcement we were just looking at. That was the 9/11 that had certificates that had been issued for both of those grade levels. I can see the 9 certificates and review both of them at the same time if I choose to. Maybe one of them is merit promotion, one of them is delegated examining, whatever the case may be. And within a certificate, I have the option to, let me zoom in just a little bit, see the information for an individual applicant, contact information, preferences, their answers to eligibility questions or assessments, see their category rating, their scores, their veterans preference. All of these things are things that can be toggled on or off based on the HR user and their preferences for what information do they want the hiring manager to display or to see on their side. The part that's important is this one right here, where they annotate their selection decision. So if they select an individual, then at that point, they have the option to indicate, okay, which request number do we want to select them against, what duty location, what PD number, if there's multiple PDs for that grade level. So that information can all be captured up front, or they can leave some of these information blank. If they don't necessarily know the request number that they want to associate to the selectee, they can go ahead and leave that blank, and HR can fill it out on their end. They have the option of seeing documents for each applicant, adding in their own notes. And just like HR had the option to toggle things, the hiring manager has the option to do so as well. They can print the certificate. They can print the applicant documents. So if they select all of the applicants, for example, they can choose to print their documents all at one time. So we call this batch printing, where all of the documents get compiled into a single PDF that they can review at their leisure without having to stay logged into USA Staffing the entire time. They can choose to make selection decisions individually, or they can mass apply decisions. So if they wanted to say, okay, I've selected Sadie and everybody else is not selected, I can choose all of them at the same time and say, yep, everybody else is not selected. And why? Just because they're not selected. No other specific reason necessarily needs to be provided. They do have a couple of other options in here, selected on a different certificate or not selecting pending passover, but they don't necessarily need to be used if they're not appropriate. We do have other options under declined and withdrawn as well, where you can indicate, why somebody needs to be removed from consideration because they declined the location or they failed to respond to an interview request, whatever the case may be. And you have, in addition to selected, the option to select alternates to indicate that if the primary selectee declines or otherwise fails to complete the onboarding process, you have some backups in place, basically, to offer the job to the next person in line without having to go back to the hiring manager to say, okay, sorry, they didn't make it, now who's next? So by using that alternate selection audit code, it's basically a way to indicate that you have some backups lined up in case the first person doesn't work out. So each one of these audit codes is documented on the certificate and is available to be viewed live on the HR side by the HR user looking at the certificate. Once the selecting official has completed their review, they can indicate whether or not they made a selection from this certificate and move on to returning that certificate back to the HR office. So once they have the status of selection made or not made for each of the certificates, they can return that to HR. So that's where HR takes over. They can complete the certificate audit. I'm going to put my HR user hat back.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lauren. All right, we have used up almost all of our allotted time, and I feel bad because I know, Sandy, I asked you to come here and talk about USA Hire. So let's do this. Lauren, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so basically what happens after that, I have my little reminder here, select your alternate. If it's a CAPS position, provide a salary memo. And then this is just the steps that happen after the TJO, is made. We kind of talked about this in the beginning, but again, this is just, kind of completes out the process. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Sandy because I know she wants to talk a little bit about this. But I do want to say we've answered all the questions. Sheila has answered all the questions in the chat. We answered beautifully verbally. What I'm going to do is make sure that we get a transcript of these and kind of make them into a little Q&A document that we'll send out next week along with the edited recording and the deck. So I'll say now, Sandy, you have 1 whole minute to talk about USA Hire.
Okay, thank you. And I will condense it and make it fast. What is USA Hire? It's a suite of assessments, right, that's been developed by OPM that measures the general competencies and soft skills critical to the job. So what it is an assessment on top of the occupational questionnaire that applicants respond to when they're applying for a position. And they have to meet a certain score to be deemed best qualified to be referred on a certificate. We've been piloting this for different occupational series in enterprise services. We've done it for a couple program analyst positions, record management specialists, and it's worked out, fairly well. It can limit the applicant pool because, number one, if people do not take the assessment, they are no longer considered for the position. And again, if they don't get I'm going to call it a best qualified score or a cutoff score that OPM has designated for certain positions, then they will not be referred on a certificate. So it's just a way to further assess candidates other than them answering the occupational questionnaire, saying that they're an expert in everything. So more to come on this. If you're interested in using this assessment, you can let your TA specialist know when you're posting a position. It is not for use in all occupational series and grades. OPM further on in the slide deck has a chart of what occupational and grades is available for use. But if you are interested in using it, just talk to your TA specialist when you have that strategic conversation, and we'd be happy to work with you. So that's the short and fast.
Look at you.
Condensed version.
Nicely done, ma'am. I need to get better at that. There's some more information for you guys in here. We already did questions. Just go a couple of slides further, Lauren, because I want to show folks what they're going to be getting in the deck. There's resources. Keep going. One more. Okay, cool. So there's a lot of stuff that we put into the back of the deck. You can flip through it, but there's like I said, there's a glossary of terminology. There's other links and things. So you'll have that all in your deck when we send it to you. Lisa, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and thank you very much for having us today and for your robust engagement. This has been great. Really appreciate the time.